Lexi Hull's name wasn't supposed to make headlines this month. Neither was Sophie Cunningham's. But when Caitlin Clark made a quiet yet undeniable push to keep both on the Fever's roster, everything changed. Clark didn't need a microphone to issue her challenge. The conversations happened in closed rooms, the loyalty broadcast through deliberate social media cues. What emerged wasn't a tantrum or a trade demand, but an ultimatum that carried serious weight.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Clark wanted her people, her foundation, and she was willing to risk her own position to make it happen. That's the level of control she already commands. Not from a resume stacked with titles, but from undeniable star power and leadership instincts well beyond her years. In a league where hierarchy used to be owned by coaches and front offices, Clark is carving a new lane. One where influence doesn't require age or tenure, only clarity and conviction. Her push to protect Cunningham and Hull isn't a side story. It's the central piece in a larger conversation about what modern leadership looks like. The message is clear. In today's WNBA, real power might not wear a suit. It wears a jersey. It started with whispers, rumors swirling around the Indiana Fever's locker room, online speculation, fans dissecting every post and every press conference. Something was brewing, and it wasn't just about wins and losses. It was about control, about loyalty, and about who really gets to decide the future of a franchise. Then, without any theatrics, Caitlin Clark made her move. A bold, career-defining ultimatum. Keep Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull, or lose me. Not officially, not in a press release, but the message was crystal clear. Clark, the rookie phenom with the weight of the WNBA's media boom on her shoulders, had drawn her line in the sand. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need to pout or publicly lash out. She just made it known. This was her team, and these were her people. For weeks, the tension had been building. Management was reportedly looking at the roster with a scalpel and the names circling the chopping block. Cunningham and Hull, players who weren't topping stat sheets, but had something far more valuable in Caitlin's eyes. Trust, consistency, chemistry, the kind of teammates who hold the emotional infrastructure of a team together. Clark wasn't just trying to save her friends. This wasn't about favoritism. This was about protecting the system she believed could win. The culture she was building, not just to make the playoffs, but to create a real, long-term contender. That's what makes this moment so seismic. It's not just a roster decision. It's a shift in the power dynamic of women's basketball. A rookie, yes, a rookie, is now influencing personnel decisions at a franchise level. And not because she's demanding special treatment, but because she understands that loyalty and cohesion are assets. Real, competitive assets. It wasn't that long ago that rookies were told to stay in their lane. Learn, observe, let the veterans in front office do the talking. But Clark flipped that script before she even played a full season. She walked into the league not just with talent, but with vision. And she's executing it with surgical precision. This wasn't leaked through drama or mess. It was communicated privately, strategically. Social media only caught faint echoes. But those echoes were enough to shake the league. The Indiana Fever had a decision to make. Prioritize flexibility and analytics, or back the player who is single-handedly raising the profile of the team, the franchise, and, arguably, the league. The answer came quickly. Cunningham and Hull stayed. Because when Caitlin Clark speaks, the franchise listens. This isn't a hot take. It's reality. Clark's influence already stretches far beyond her stats. She's the reason ticket sales are spiking, the reason more people are tuning in. She's not just a player. She's a marketing engine, a narrative generator, and now, a strategic architect. And yet, what makes this even more interesting is how she's wielding that power. Not recklessly, not to throw weight around just because she can, but deliberately, thoughtfully. She understands her role, and she understands how rare it is to get this kind of leverage so early. That's the brilliance. She's not using her influence to chase personal perks. She's using it to shape a championship culture, one rooted in trust, loyalty, and the kind of team dynamic that can weather losses and pressure without falling apart. Because Clark knows this league, she's watched enough franchises get torn down by ego, by instability, by leadership that doesn't know how to lead. So when she sensed disruption, when she saw two of her most trusted teammates at risk, she acted. And that action now stands as a turning point. Clark is rewriting the rookie script. She's showing that leadership doesn't have to wait. That if you've got the influence and the vision, you can shape the team around you. And people are noticing. Fans, analysts, and even former players are calling this the beginning of a new era. An era where stars don't just play for the franchise, they shape it. And that shift, that's huge. Because for years, WNBA players have fought to be heard. Now, Clark just turned up the volume for everyone. Let's talk about what this means for the league at large. This move isn't just about the fever. It signals to every team in the WNBA that the power balance is changing. Players aren't just assets anymore. They're stakeholders. And when you bring in someone with Caitlin Clark's platform, ignoring her insight isn't just disrespectful. It's self-sabotage. Clark isn't the only rising star in the league, but she might be the first of this new wave to make such a public-facing power play. And now that the blueprint is out there, don't be surprised if more follow. Because once you show that a player can influence major decisions and win that battle, the rest of the league watches closely. Of course, not everyone's applauding. They're critics. People worry that this sets a dangerous precedent, that giving a rookie this much control could backfire, that teams could become too player-driven and lose balance. But here's the thing. Caitlin Clark didn't demand trade. She didn't threaten a walkout. She made a strategic ask rooted in long-term thinking. And it worked. Management didn't cave to drama. They recognized that Clark's understanding of chemistry, of team building, wasn't emotional. It was tactical. And when someone brings in her kind of revenue and recognition, you listen when they say, these two matter. What makes this so compelling is that Clark's loyalty isn't performative. It's not just for optics. She's betting on people she believes in, not the flashiest stats. She's not chasing individual greatness at the expense of culture. She's choosing foundation over flash. In a league where rosters shift constantly and players often feel disposable, Clark made it clear. Not here. Not on her team. It's a protective instinct, but also a visionary one. She knows the pressure that's coming, the expectations, the scrutiny. She knows how hard it is to win when you're surrounded by players you don't trust. And so she made sure to lock down the ones who give her confidence on and off the court. The Fever's front office had a choice. Treat her like every other young talent or acknowledge the unprecedented influence she carries. They made the right call because Clark is not just their best player. She's their future. And the way she's leading now, that's not the kind of leadership you teach. That's innate. So where does this go from here? That's a question burning through every front office. Because the league just watched a rookie make a demand, back it up, and win. You think that's going unnoticed? Not a chance. There are ripple effects coming. Agents are taking notes. Players are realizing they can speak up sooner. That they should. That their value isn't just what happens between the lines. It's how they shape what happens outside them, too. And Clark? She's not looking back. This move will be remembered. Not because it was loud, but because it was smart. Because it reminded everyone that leadership isn't about age or tenure. It's about vision, strategy, knowing what needs to happen and having the confidence and the clout to make it happen. And she's just getting started. Drop a comment below. Do you think Clark made the right call? Should players have this much influence this early in their careers? Hit like if you're here for this era of player power. Share it with someone still stuck in the rookies should stay quiet mindset. And make sure to subscribe. Because if this is how Caitlin Clark's rookie year is going, we're going to want to be here for the rest. The second Caitlin Clark stepped onto a WNBA court, everything changed. Ratings, headlines, ticket sales, national attention. But now, with one bold move, she's changed something far more powerful, the culture. This wasn't a buzzer beater. It wasn't a logo 3. It wasn't even on the court. And still, it might be the most impactful play of her career so far. Because when a rookie tells a franchise to hold the line or risk losing her, that's not just confidence. That's control. That's understanding exactly how much gravity she carries and how to use it. Let's be clear. There's never been a moment like this in the WNBA. Not from a player this early in her career. Not this direct. And definitely not this effective. Caitlin Clark's ultimatum didn't come with fireworks. There were no rants, no viral sound bites, no social media stunts. It was a clean, quiet power move. And that's what made it devastatingly effective. Her message was simple. Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull stay, where you risk losing the very chemistry, loyalty, and trust that I need to succeed. Because without that foundation, you're not building anything worth sustaining. And Indiana listened. They didn't listen because they were afraid. They listened because they finally understood something essential. Caitlin Clark isn't just a franchise player. She's the franchise. She's the reason fans are selling out arenas. She's the reason non-WNBA fans suddenly know what the Fever schedule looks like. She's the reason the league is trending on platforms that usually ignore women's sports. So when Clark speaks, even softly, the stakes are high. This wasn't just about roster politics. This was a lesson in how modern influence works. Clark didn't throw a fit. She made a case. A smart, strategic, value-driven case. One rooted in more than performance metrics. One rooted in human dynamics, chemistry, and real leadership. And honestly, it's kind of genius. Because the truth is, most athletes don't get this far this fast. They're expected to earn their voice over time. By showing up, staying quiet, and waiting for the baton to be passed. But Caitlin Clark rewrote that script. She walked into the league with a clear understanding. Influence isn't something you wait for. It's something you leverage, especially when you've got it. And she has it. What makes this so compelling is that Clark's demand wasn't about bringing someone in. It wasn't about chasing a flashy signing or securing a bigger spotlight. It was about keeping people, about not losing what she knows is already working. Because sometimes real leadership isn't about change, it's about preservation. Clark saw the roster getting wobbly. She saw the chatter online. She heard the whispers in practice. And rather than letting it unfold like some passive rookie, she stepped up and made a call. This ends now. Hull and Cunningham might not be headliners on paper, but they're her teammates, her allies, the ones who understand the tempo she plays at, the space she needs, the emotional rhythm of the locker room. Players like that, you don't replace them with a trade or a waiver claim. You lose them. And Clark wasn't about to let that happen. What's wild is how composed it all was. Clark didn't need to stir up drama to make an impact. She understood the moment, understood the stakes, understood her value, and she used it. That's a dangerous combination for anyone not paying attention, because now the league sees what player power looks like in its newest, most evolved form. This isn't just a future MVP throwing weight around. This is a brand-savvy, franchise-defining force taking control of her narrative before someone else writes it for her. It's not just the Fever watching. Other players are watching. Executives, owners, agents, they're all taking notes. This wasn't just about keeping teammates. It was about setting precedent. It's no secret that the WNBA is entering a new era. One driven by media attention, brand deals, streaming numbers, and cultural relevance. And Clark? She's the poster child of that evolution. But she's not coasting on hype. She's steering it. And what's even more impressive, she's doing it with a level of emotional intelligence you rarely see in professional sports, at any age. She didn't throw anyone under the bus. She didn't grandstand. She didn't make it about her. She made it about us. Her teammates. Her culture. Her vision. That kind of leadership, you can't teach it. You either have it or you don't. And Clark clearly does. Let's be honest. There are veterans in this league who've never had this kind of impact on their front office. Not because they aren't worthy, but because the system wasn't built to give them that space. It was built to contain, to manage, to keep the players on one side of the wall and management on the other. Clark just kicked that wall in, and she did it without raising her voice. That's what makes this revolutionary. She didn't just change the team. She changed the playbook. You think other rookies aren't watching this and realizing that their voices might matter more than they thought? You think veterans aren't taking notes on how to get their front office to listen without setting the world on fire? Caitlin Clark just gave the entire league a blueprint. And now that the mold is broken, it won't go back to what it was. Let's not forget the timing either. This comes as the WNBA faces a crucial period. League-wide negotiations looming, contract restructuring, ongoing debates about revenue sharing and player treatment. And Clark, she just took the first step in showing that players are no longer passive in that equation. She's not just part of the conversation. She is the conversation. And that's going to have a ripple effect that touches every corner of the league, from the way teams build rosters to how much input players have in long-term planning. Clark didn't just influence Indiana's future. She's influencing the WNBA's future. What's fascinating is that she did it through loyalty. That's not usually what you associate with power plays. But for Clark, loyalty is the power play. Loyalty is the leverage. She didn't need to pit herself against management. She just made it clear that if they were betting on her, then they were betting on the people who make her great. You either back the full package or risk losing the heartbeat of your franchise. And Indiana got the message, because they know they're not just building a team. They're building around Caitlin. Every decision now carries that weight. And that's a responsibility the franchise has to carry wisely, because Clark's not going to be the last star who pushes back. But she may very well be the first to do it this way, with poise, with clarity, with impact. She's proven that players don't have to wait until year 7 to have a seat at the table. That when you show value early, you can start shaping your environment immediately. And that shaping it matters. This is the kind of leadership that doesn't show up on stat sheets, but it's the kind that builds dynasties. So now, the ball's in everyone else's court. How will other franchises respond? How will the league evolve to accommodate this rising wave of player empowerment? How will management adapt when influence starts coming from inside the locker room instead of just the front office? Because if Caitlin Clark has proven anything, it's that the real game doesn't just happen during quarters 1 through 4. Sometimes, the biggest wins happen behind the scenes. When the cameras are off, the media is quiet, and a 22-year-old makes a quiet but undeniable decision that reshapes a franchise. So if you're still watching this like it's just about 2 roster spots, you're missing the whole point. This is about evolution, about power, about a new kind of leader who isn't asking to be respected because she's already earned it. And now, she's using it. Caitlin Clark didn't just play the game. She played the system. And in doing so, she may have set a new precedent not just for how rookies are treated, but for how stars in the WNBA are expected to lead. Because this wasn't just about who stays on the roster. This was about who gets to shape the direction of a franchise. Who gets to say, this matters to me, and that should matter to you too. And what did she choose to fight for? Not a pay raise, not more shots, not a trade, but for the preservation of chemistry, of loyalty, of a team dynamic that's bigger than individual stats. Clark made her stand not to boost her own spotlight, but to keep the people beside her who hold that locker room together. That's the part critics are missing. They want to reduce this to a power grab, as if Clark just flexed because she could. But the truth is, this was a calculated, purposeful decision grounded in team success, not personal gain. She understands what kind of environment she thrives in. And she also understands that great basketball doesn't come from spreadsheets. It comes from trust. She didn't demand superstars. She didn't ask for the front office to roll out red carpets. She simply said, don't break what's working. Because here's what most people don't realize. Players like Hull and Cunningham don't show up in headlines, but they show up every day. They hold the team together when the pressure is suffocating. They absorb the noise so players like Clark can shine. They know the plays, but more importantly, they know her. You don't manufacture that kind of connection in training camp. You don't plug that in halfway through the season. You build it over time. And once it's there, you protect it. Clark didn't just protect it. She weaponized it. She made it clear. If you want to build around me, it starts with preserving the chemistry that's already here. And Indiana, to their credit, heard her. They pivoted. They realigned. They put their faith not just in her skill set, but in her judgment. That's what's so groundbreaking here. Management didn't just acknowledge Clark's performance. They acknowledged her perspective. They treated her like a partner, not a product. And that's new. Historically, The player management divide in the WNBA has been a fortress. Players play. Execs decide. That wall has been up for years. But Clark just kicked a hole through it with quiet precision. And now that it's open, you better believe others are walking through it. Because once one player gets a say and proves it works, it's game on. And Clark just proved it works. The Fever are more stable. The locker room is more unified. The foundation is intact. And the message is clear. If you want the best from Caitlin Clark, you give her the team she believes in. She didn't threaten to leave. She didn't go nuclear. She simply said, "This is the kind of team I need if you want to win." And the Fever chose to win. You can feel the shift now. This wasn't a random moment. It was a marker, a signal to the rest of the league that the future looks different. That player voices aren't just tolerated. They're essential, especially when those players aren't just chasing individual glory. They're building systems that last. It would have been easier for Clark to stay quiet, to let the front office handle it, to say, "Well, it's not my place yet." But that's not how you lead. And clearly, she knows that. Because leadership isn't about age. It's about clarity. And Clark was clear. She values loyalty. She values culture. And she's willing to put her name and her power on the line to protect both. What happens next? That's where things get interesting. Front offices across the league now have to reckon with this new reality. If you want to attract and keep generational talent, you're going to have to listen earlier. You're going to have to collaborate. You're going to have to stop treating players like rentals and start treating them like architects. Clark just made that the new standard, whether other franchises like it or not. And players? They're watching. Young stars are realizing they don't have to wait 5 seasons to have a voice. Veterans are realizing they don't have to go through the back door to get heard. The line between locker room and boardroom just got a whole lot thinner. All thanks to a rookie who decided her influence wasn't just earned, it was actionable. Caitlin Clark didn't change the WNBA with one shot or one game. She changed it by knowing her value and refusing to let that value be separated from the people who help her thrive. So what do you think? Did Clark make the right call? Is this the start of a more empowered league, or a power shift management can't control? Let us know in the comments. Smash that like button if you believe loyalty is strength. Share it with someone who's watching this shift in real time, and subscribe for more coverage of the plays being made off the court, the ones shaping the future of sports right now.